Starfield is shaping up to be one of the biggest games this year, promising endless variety and hundreds of planets, and claim that no one playthrough will ever be the same. Phil Spencer has even said he has put hundreds of hours without getting bored. So why am I more excited for Spider-Man 2? Something has rubbed me the wrong way about Starfield since it was announced. Whenever a AAA studio makes a huge promise for open world games like this, I can't help but think back to the times that we've been burned. Cyberpunk 2077 guaranteed a focus on last-gen consoles, and performance on launch let us know that that was a lie. No Man's Sky, a similar style of game geared towards planetary exploration, had a list of promises for what was available to do at launch, and ended up being a lackluster RNG-based snooze fest. Todd Howard promised us 16 times the detail for Fallout 76, and we all saw how that played out. People act like Bethesda has a perfect track record, when in fact they are notorious for buggy launches, even on games that are absolutely beloved today. Fallout 76 is common knowledge, but people constantly forget that games like Skyrim and Fallout 4 had really buggy launches as well. Bethesda didn't fix these games until months or even years down the line, but everyone gave them the pass because it's just Bethesda, and the mods people added in the meantime made the game at least playable. It doesn't matter that some of those games run smoothly now. We should be receiving finished games the day they end up in our hands. Starfield has potential, but the track record of its studio has me sweating a bit. That's not to say that you should never trust a company that makes big promises. There are definitely situations where studios have delivered exactly what they advertised. But the bigger the giant, the harder they fall, and Starfield is setting themselves up as Goliath amongst Davids. One big thing that sets Starfield up as one of these giants is its freedom of exploration. Over 1,000 planets with stuff to explore, it is incredibly expansive and seemingly has tons of opportunities for you to craft your own story. Sadly, we have confirmation that only 10% of these planets will support life. The rest of them will probably be something like this: a barren wasteland with nothing to do but run in one direction for 10 minutes without any way to get around but on your own 2 feet. Yes, that still leaves us with about 100 planets that contain life to explore, but my question is, why make 90% of your open world Explorer game not worth the trouble of exploring? Why add so much dead space to your game? With how much of the game will be procedurally generated, it makes me wonder how much more they might have been able to add had more time been spent on stuff players will actually utilize. That's where people come in and say, once mods are added, then we can fill in that blank space and do even more of what we want. And that is true. Once mods are introduced that may fix some of the problems with exploration. Mods will even be implemented on day one, but there's only one problem with that. I literally couldn't care less about mods. I like when a developer maps out an idea and creates an experience for you. Mods are more of a make your own fun outside of the developer's intended purpose for a game. It almost feels like being given an incomplete game and putting it in the hands of the gamers to finish. At heart, I am a console gamer. I have never had to rely on mods to have fun in a game, nor have I felt the need to add anything extra to my games to make it feel more complete. It just isn't a huge flex to me that I had to add what the devs didn't to make the game fun. I'm not saying that mods are a bad thing. There's definitely a crowd out there who enjoy making and implementing these mods, and people who enjoy adding them to their own games. Mods just aren't my cup of tea, so it adds no value to me personally that Starfield will be ready to accept these on day one. Which brings me to the final and probably most important reason why I'm more excited for most other games than I am for Starfield. Open world exploration games just aren't my preferred style of game. I know, shocker. I have an opinion about something totally subjective, God forbid, but honestly, at the end of the day, that's what it boils down to. Games like Skyrim and Witcher 3 have just never been my go-to games. Not for a lack of trying, I've put multiple hours into these games. I just didn't enjoy them after a while and put them down relatively quickly. I wanted to spend my free time playing games that I knew would enjoy more, like Insomniac's Spiderman. Games with one or two central characters whose story and growth are complex and engaging. Large games where everything is crafted from the ground up and not left to RNG to build my surroundings. Games that are story-driven but gameplay-focused, with creative movement and stylistic combat that doesn't take too much control away from you as the player. I'm sure Starfield may have some of these elements, but it's not a guarantee like it will be for Spider-Man 2. And yes, the game hasn't come out yet. I can say nothing definitively, but I have more ground to stand on for this argument. Starfield is a fresh IP with nothing but its developer's name to back it up. And like I said before, that isn't really saying a lot. Spider-Man 2 is the third game in a franchise by a company with a near-perfect track record. From the gameplay that I have experienced with my own hand in the last 2 games and the changes we have seen throughout multiple gameplay demos, it appears that the gameplay itself has been improved on in almost every way that the fans wanted. And this is quite literally my favorite version of Peter Parker, and his story in the first game will go down in history as one of the best Spider-Man movies of all time. Miles Morales was a short game, but it played just as well, if not better than the first game, with a solid story in its own right. And the first game might be in my top 10 favorite games of all time, and Spider-Man 2 is shaping up to be everything that the first one was and more. From the new takedowns to the wingsuits to the introductions to Venom, there was a lot to be excited for, especially since we have seen this team cook before. The combat system will feel familiar but refreshing, giving the new gameplay with the Venom suits. They are expanding what is already one of the best New York cities in a video game, all coming from a company that has built a solid foundation of trust with its consumers. The only history I have with Starfield is the games I've played from Bethesda, so it is next to impossible for me to find that same level of hope when the only game developed by Bethesda that I've really enjoyed was Fallout 4. People out there say, why are you hating on a game that hasn't even come out yet, Sony Pony? And my only response to that is, why are you glazing a game that hasn't even come out yet? Criticism goes both ways. I'm just taking my experience with what the studio has already put out, keeping myself cautiously optimistic but highly skeptical about the game's release. I'd rather be surprised in a good way than a bad way. Kratos said it best: keep your expectations low and you'll never be disappointed. Regardless of how I feel about the game now, it won't change the cold hard facts of how the game will run on launch. Now, I still plan on playing this game the day it comes out. I try my best to give each game a fair shot, regardless of whether or not I expected it to be good. I've played games that I didn't expect to like and found them to be a blast, and also been really disappointed by games that I thought would rock. As much as it seems like I'm hating on Starfield, I genuinely hope I am proven wrong. This would be a huge win for Xbox fans, and it would be a redemption for Bethesda that I didn't think was coming. But until I get my hands on it, Starfield will remain a game that I expect absolutely nothing out of.